Amy, will you just give us a quick overview of what we learned about last week?
Yes, last week we had a great discussion on the how of emotions. So how do we show up emotionally? And we really use that core process tool, probably the first two letters the most, call it and own it, around really identifying what we're feeling. We talked about spending time giving specific concrete names to the emotions that we feel and understanding why we're feeling those things. And that's such an important piece to add on to the what that we've been talking about of emotions, just being aware that we're feeling things. And then last week, really specifically thinking more deeply about how to name what it is that we're feeling and what does that mean and why are those feelings there. So I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today. This is live and real for me specifically this week. So Maria, why don't you build on what we did last week with what we get to do today?
Excellent. And if you have not had an opportunity to listen to that conversation, you need to. I listened to it and I just thought, oh man, I wish I would have been in there. I would have said this, I would have asked this, I would have, it was just a great conversation. So now we're moving on to the when of this conversation, the art of action, the art of action when it comes to emotional agility. So if we look at our core process tool, Amy mentioned that we kind of went through the call it and the own it when we're trying to figure out what is this. But now, once you understand, because remember, this is the companion tool to the know yourself to lead yourself. You'll see that on the vertical axis, on the horizontal axis. So today we're going to focus on that horizontal axis. How do we lead ourselves? How do we respond and execute? Now that we've identified what the issue is, we've asked that question of what's it like to be on the other side of me when I behave like this? What are the long-term consequences if I don't do anything about how I am reacting? And what is a different way that I can respond? The respond is being very specific about what you're going to do, and then execute is finding a time to actually get that done. So we're going to spend our time talking about that now, because it's great if you can identify that emotion, but now what do I do with it? And Amy, I would love for you to share a little bit about just some of the craziness that is going on in your world, because it's not a matter of if the craziness is going to hit. It's a matter of when. Mm-hmm. And so this conversation of emotional agility is our attempt to stock your warehouse with tools, concepts, principles, ideas, right? I tell my client, I am stocking your warehouse. So when you run into a situation where you're like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm exhausted, I don't know what to do, go to the warehouse. What have we covered? So go to the warehouse that we've been stocking for you, right? With these tools, with these concepts, with these ideas, in order to say, is there a different way that I can look at the situation and see it differently, or perhaps even ask a friend to help you process through that?
Yeah, it's great to be able to share our real stories too. I was telling Maria and Tracy as we were getting started, I don't know if all of you listening have Waffle House in your part of town, but we do here. And they serve these amazing hash browns, and you can get them scattered, smothered, and covered with all kinds of goodness on them. And I told them, I'm feeling like a Waffle House hash brown this week, scattered, smothered, and covered, but not in a good way. And, if I'm being real and vulnerable and transparent, it's been a hard week. I've got elderly, aging parents who have been unwell, and I've been down in Mississippi helping them with some surgery, and just my technology. My computer died on Friday. A couple of weeks ago, I was having trouble with it. So I just feel like it's been one thing after another. And I was telling Maria and Tracy when we were backstage, I just feel frozen, like I don't know what to do. And it occurs to me as I'm telling you this now that when we're under a lot of stress, we have things happen that cause us to have an emotional response that will make us freeze or flee or fight. And tendencies being what they are, my tendency in response under a lot of stress is to freeze up and to feel like I don't know what to do, or even to start thinking, dreading the rest of the week. And so I loved what we were talking about backstage, because it helped me see, okay, I can actually partially respond by just thinking through what's going on here. And Maria started asking me some questions to help me understand and name she helped me do the call it, own it part. And the process of conversation and dialogue actually made me exhale. And I could feel my pulse slow down. I could feel my breathing slow down. And, like I can get through this next, whatever I've got in front of me. It was really pretty amazing to be preparing to talk about this stuff, but actually have a live incident to
Yes. Yeah, and what Amy's referring to is co-regulating, because we can regulate our emotions, which is to monitor them, to identify what's happening and try and figure out, okay, how do I want to respond? 2 times ago, we talked about, do I express this emotion? Do I suppress this emotion until I can figure out? But sometimes we need someone to just bounce this out. And even if I just had sat there and just listened to Amy and said, wow, parent situation, travel, exhaustion, technology, all of those things. Amy, that just sounds hard. That can be so helpful. More than, well, what you need to do is go to this computer shop that I know and, visit them and, and start telling Amy what to do, or just sometimes sharing in that pain and that frustration can be helpful. And so I was asking Amy, I said, okay, so what does your day look like today? Is there an opportunity for you to get some recharge? And today's going to be a heavy day. So, tomorrow's going to be a heavy day. So rest is going to be important tonight. And so you just kind of helping Amy think through what's coming. How do I look at this situation so that I can get to Friday and really just, exhale? We're going to have these situations, right? So sometimes if we can have someone that'll help us co-regulate, even they might be able to articulate better than we can what's happening to us, what we're feeling.
Some amazing things happen in those moments, folks. When Maria was responding to me, I was not able to respond to myself. I was sort of frozen and stuck, and listening and pulling from me and clarifying what my story was. I felt seen and heard and understood. And that listening that she did for me really helped me understand where I was. It helped me identify and really be able to think again. I got out of that freeze mode into really being able to do something about thinking about where I am today. And I think that process is so important. And when we look at that core process tool and see the word respond, sometimes we think it's just I'm the one responding, but actually Maria was responding. She was showing up and really listening, and she was not going into fix it mode. She was listening, and that's actually not her tendency. Her tendency is to go right to fix it mode, but she was disciplining her tendency around that response to ask some questions and help me, clarify what it was that I was feeling. That was so important. And I think that's how we can show up for each other, because like Maria said, life is really hard and we don't know what the day is going to bring. But when we have some tools and language in our warehouse, we can draw from those. We can help other people look at the shelf. What do I need to do here? What tool do I need to pull off here? So I love this live action opportunity here.
Yes, and we're talking about, this is a conversation we had like 20 minutes ago. Yes. So it's not like it happened last week.
Yeah.
Now, don't be intimidated. You might say, well, sure, you guys are consultants. You guys know a bunch of stuff that will be helpful. I'm telling you, what I did had nothing to do with consulting. What I did was just empathize, ask some questions, draw out a little bit about what's going on in Amy's life. And that's something that everyone can do. So you don't have to have, years of consulting and coaching experience. It's really just being in the moment with that person. And so as Amy and I were talking about this, we realized this is the communication code. This is a tool that we have. And so we want to share that tool with you because it's really important. You see those two, transmitting and receiving, dishes there. It's communication is not just sending a message, but making sure that the person receives it as intended. And the communication code, these are 5 areas that you are going to run into all the time. And this is where we really mess up if we're not aware. So critique is the first one. and it's just critique my work, shoot holes in it, collaborate, shape this with me. I want to work with someone. Clarify, I'm going to tell you something, but check that you understand. I'm open to questions. Care is just create a safe space for me. Celebrate is celebrate success with me. So when we don't know, or we're not picking up because we're not really in the moment, what the person needs from us, we might send a different message. We might be doing something that is going to be totally not what the other person wanted. So when Amy started telling me about her day, I thought care. I needed to create a safe space for Amy to just tell me what was going on, what was frustrating, the things that she's had to do, the exhaustion. And so this was not a time for me to critique. This was not a time for me to even collaborate. It was just clarify, ask some questions, care. It certainly wasn't a time to celebrate, right? It's like, this is just a hard time right now. There's nothing. But that communication code, 5 words, if you can remember these 5 words and think, what is the person on the other side need from me right now? It clues us in. If nothing else, we have a shot at being pretty close to what that person is feeling. So the communication code is another tool that we are stocking your warehouse with, because this whole ability to be emotionally agile means that you have options. And when you're frozen, there are no options. So sometimes if you can come along and help someone get thawed out, that could be just the best thing that you could do for someone. And if you are at a loss, just listen. If you don't know what to do, then just listen and help that person, come down to a place where they can have a little bit more perspective. Or if you're that person who's stuck, just know, find that safe person that will help you co-regulate, understand what is happening in your world. And that might be, whether it's your children, right? Someone's crying, something happened. It's a coworker who's upset. It applies, or it's yourself. It's just, I need to take a moment. I need to take a breather here and think about what is happening. And so that art of action does require that we use that agility to figure out, okay, what's the next step? If it's not listening, then it might be one of these 5 things that you can provide for that person or provide for yourself. But this is just another way of being agile in our communication.
That's great. And I would say if Amy's default is freeze, my default is probably fight, even though I hate to say that out loud. And so I'm looking at this communication code, which, those of you watching this tool, put this on your shelf. You will want to pull this out again. This tool has saved many a relationship for myself, because I tend toward critique. And nobody wants to hear critique right away. No one does, but I think maybe they must, or I wouldn't do it. And so help those of us out there, Amy or Maria, on what do we do with that when we tend toward fight and we tend toward critique?
I think it's helpful to reflect back what you're seeing and hearing in someone. So Tracy, if the wheels have come off your day and you're just being really testy and critiquing things left and right, my tendency might be to back away from that. But if I'm really going to show up and help you hear yourself and be for you more than I'm being for myself, running away because I'm scared, then I'm going to ask some questions. Hey, Tracy, it sounds like you're having a tough day. I'm going to ask some questions, clarify a little bit, not critique, but clarify, because I want to help you understand what's happening. So the same way that Maria drew me out and helped me get unfrozen, would that be a helpful thing if you're in fight mode to say, hey, Tracy, it sounds like you're really frustrated today. What's going on? Would that be helpful?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I think it's the way someone says it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I know you nailed it, if I know you're for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it doesn't work if you think I'm out to get you, if I'm asking you this as a way to gather my own ammunition to take you out, right? That's a really important distinction.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, so it's we're talking about, helping regulate our own emotions, but helping someone else, right? If I saw Tracy really upset, say, what's got into you? She's not going to respond well to that, right? Because it doesn't feel like I'm for her.
Right.
It feels like I am equally frustrated. I'm not monitoring myself, and now we're probably going to get into an argument, or we're going to give each other a cold shoulder, or whatever it is. So I'm thinking about, we're talking about helping someone else, but what if it's just you and you don't have the benefit of that? The tool that came to mind as we were thinking about this was the Discretion and Discipline tool. And so this tool, put that in your warehouse, is what should I share? Who do I share it with? And when do I share it? So let's say you don't have the benefit of a safe place to land where someone can help you process. These 3 questions will at least give you pause to begin to think, wow, my energy is very high. Either I'm very, very angry, I'm very, very sad, I'm very, whatever it is. What should I be sharing right now? Who do I share it with? And when do I share it? The when might be not this moment. What I have to share is absolutely necessary, and I do need to have that conversation, but I need to wait till that energy level gets to a point where I can have a productive conversation. Who are the right people for you to share that with? I love what Jessica was saying last time, is let it all hang out. Sometimes that may not be the best thing. In fact, I would recommend that you be very discreet and disciplined about who's in the room, how do you want to show up, and then what to share. Oftentimes, especially if we haven't processed emotions, and this 5th emotion is the one we want to talk about, number 1 through 4 show up as well, right? Because, once the gates open, and now we're talking about things you did in 1985. And so that might not be helpful. So stick to what it is, stick to that issue. But if you can even just journal answers to these questions, it'll give you enough perspective if you're having to process this by yourself to figure out, how do I really want to respond here? How can I be agile and still have a productive conversation with my boss, with the children, with, my spouse, friends, whatever that is. But sometimes we don't know where to go. So these tools just give us a way to at least get that conversation started.
I am thinking, Maria, about your suggestion to journal. And I'm imagining, let's say my meeting was with the 2 of you and your clients, new clients who don't know me very well. We don't have a lot of relational capital built up. It would not be the thing for me to show up to our first meeting and lay all this out, what kind of day I've had. You'd run to the next county saying, thanks, but no thanks. But if I sat in my car and took a minute to maybe write answers to these questions, not only would I use some discipline and discretion around how I show up and how I'm acting, acting in the right way with the 2 of you, I would also process some of what I'm feeling, so that the act of writing would help me be more agile. So that's a 2-for-1 strategy, actually, as I think about it here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have a question coming in. Janice says, I tend to overshare. I like your example of journaling. Can you give some more practical tips?
The oversharer. Either you're over or under. I'm an undersharer.
Me too.
And I want to make sure that everything is perfect and accurate before I let people know. But by that time, it feels like, well, you could have given us a heads up here, Maria. So think about critically, if you tend to overshare or undershare, think about examples of that so that you can identify what it is. So I don't know if I know sometimes as I'm speaking, I have this little, voice in my head says either, hey, you might want to hold back on that. And if you get that voice and you say like, shut up, and you keep going and you keep sharing, start to discipline yourself when you hear that voice, that flag that goes up, or you're picking up something from people where you might, maybe I've spoken for too long, then always err on the side of pause. Err on the side of pause. And that way you can at least reflect, let other people talk, And then, so sometimes it's just listening to those cues that we are picking up from people in the audience, or maybe that flag that goes up for you, if you have that, and just err on the side of, let me stop right here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just stop and tell me what you're thinking.
I tend, Janice, to be an oversharer. So I'm tracking with what you may be thinking about too. And just to add on to the good things Maria has been sharing, when I have recognized my tendency to overshare, the question I ask is, why? That's actually not on this tool, but it goes into discipline and discretion. Why am I wanting to share this right now? Is it to help complete the cycle of strong emotion that I'm feeling? And if so, and it's not the right person, if I can say that the who is not the right person and now is not the right time, then I'm learning how to discipline myself there. We don't need to not let strong emotion go unexpressed, but sometimes we need to delay when we do it. I'll give you an example. So sometimes you can pass a crowded construction site and get cat calls from the construction workers, and that is an annoying thing to me. It feels disrespectful, and my tendency might be to I do tend to freeze, but in that situation it's offensive, so I might tend to want to say something back, and that might interfere with my safety. So I have to have discretion there as well. That's another example. But to the oversharing idea, I think asking yourself, listen for that flag, that internal flag that we all tend to get if we pay attention to it. Why is it that I want to share this? And if it's just to help me cycle through, probably better to wait to share that at a different time with a safe person.
Yes, the other thing I want you to think about is, how do you process? Do you tend to think out loud? If you are the kind of person that tends to think out loud, then the best thing for you, because I have a client that tends to do this, is if he's going to have a difficult conversation that might be emotional, he scripts what he wants to say and he sticks to the script.
That's good.
And so sometimes he will even tell people, this is really hard for me. I have written some thoughts down. Would you allow me to get through all my thoughts? And then, I'll open it up for, your thoughts. And that has kept him from, straying off and then going off into a tangent, sharing too much. So he's kind of disciplined in the creation of the script. And then he knows, okay, if I stick to this, I think we'll have a really good conversation. So that might be another practical way of getting your thoughts together. If you tend to think out loud, put them down on paper, or have someone talk with, and then take some notes on how that is. If you tend to process inside and all of that is going on side, it's still a good technique to be able to do. So those are some practical ways that I know I've seen some folks be able to rein in what they want to say, especially if the topic could potentially be emotional or charged.
That's really good, Maria. Extroverts, when we think about extroverts and extroverts talk out loud to think, to figure out what they want. And you could end up oversharing in that situation. And with that tendency to overshare, for me, it's usually I get worked up about something and I share too much of the wrong thing and it doesn't go over well. And I have actually learned to script out what it is. I'll go think about what it is that I'm feeling and write it out and stick to that script. And it keeps me in the lane of appropriateness, I think, when I remember to do it. Doesn't always happen.
No,
Yes.
That's great. Great advice. We're almost out of time, but I do have one more question coming in. I'd love for us to go back to the communication code, because Sylvia says, can you tell me more about the celebrate in the communication code? I want to celebrate the other women in my life, but it's not natural to me. People tend to see me as very stoic. What do you
Very
think about
stoic.
this? Yeah.
Okay. This is excellent. I think we think great things about people all the time. We need to discipline ourselves to let them out, right? You're sitting in a meeting, someone says something really great. You're like, oh, wow, he handled that really well. You need to tell them after the meeting, you handled that really well. You need to tell the women in your life, the way you showed up today in that, that report. I mean, the way you organize things, thank you. It can be small celebrations, right? Or it could be I would love for all of us to have lunch, but the rule is we can't talk about work, right? And it could be something, fun along those lines. But celebration, if that's not natural to you, you're going to have to figure out some strategies to make sure that happens. Amy, what comes to mind when you think about celebration?
Intentional, deliberate use of that communication code, to your point, and especially at work, we tend to do much more critique than we do celebrate, but celebrating is a way of showing up for people and helping them feel seen and valued and understood. So it's almost it's a very excited form of caring, and it's a really important part of being in relationships at work, at home, in the community. And I just think it's something we don't do enough of. So agreeing with what you're saying there, Maria, that we need to be deliberate and consistent doing it. It helps so much.
Yes.
Absolutely. Sylvia, I will say this. I have a lot of celebration for people in my mind, but like Maria said, it doesn't always come out. And actually this morning I was texting a friend who I saw something on that he had produced. He's in the video kind of space, and I was impressed. And so I just texted him and just said, wow, I saw what you did and it was amazing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to make a commitment to myself that once a day, I'm going to celebrate someone. If it's just a text, if I email someone, but that's going to be a goal of mine. So I'd like Amy and Maria to hold me accountable to that. Like, how's your celebration going? Because I think sometimes we have to get that practical. If we're just not good at riding a bike, then we need to ride a bike every day until we get good, right? So if I'm really not good at celebration, I've got to put some things in place for myself to learn to do that. And so that's going to be mine. So,
Mm-hmm. And Sylvia, I'll show you how you do it. It does not have to be a perfect 10 gymnastics routine for the Olympics. It's as simple as this. Hey, Maria and Tracy, it helped me literally so much today for you to let me say what was going on and to listen to me. And I really do honestly feel better. So thank you.
Yay! Celebration. Yeah. You're welcome, Amy.
Oh, you're welcome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, ladies, we're out of time. Once again, it goes so quickly. Amy, can you remind us of what's different about next Wednesday on this live stream?
Next week, you have the opportunity for some live consulting. So Sylvia, if you've got some specific questions you want answered in addition to what you asked today, write us at tracy.rader@giantworldwide.com. You can email her with those specific things. We want to give you the opportunity to workshop your emotional agility questions so that you can show up and be all that you can be in your relationship. So we'd like you to join us next week with that opportunity. So whatever is on your mind, if you'll drop Tracy a quick email before you return to what your next task is, we'd love to invite a couple of people for some workshop time with us.
Absolutely.
So you can either type them in or, send them ahead of time and give us a chance to think about them. But you will have 4 consultants helping you process through your issues. So I hope that you will join us.
Yes. That's right. That's right. Well, thank you once again, Amy and Maria. It's always so helpful to me personally, and I know our viewers feel the same way. So we'll see all of you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Bye, everyone.